Welcome to Courtney on Health, heard on malcolmpresents.com on a weekly basis, where you could hear this show and other shows on Malcolm Presents, plus all the back shows on Courtney on Health. Anyway, Max, do the intro.
Here I go. So, hi, Courtney, and hi, Malcolm, and welcome to Courtney on Health, a Zoomcast podcast series about how to get through. And I shake my head every time. I can't wait till I can say COVID's done. It's endemic. We get a shot every year, and that's it. But hopefully that'll come one day. But anyway, Courtney has tips on nutrition and exercise. She's a registered dietitian, and she's got all sorts of degrees, a Master of Science in Nutrition and Applied Physiology. She's an experienced nutritional and health consultant in the New York metro tri-state area, but obviously it goes way beyond that right now, into the universe and the planet and all over the world. And she will help guide you on a path to wellness and health. If only I can speak today. Okay, I'm going to start with this one today. It's not a poem, but lyrics to songs are poems. If you think about it. Lyrics are poetry. So if I say I'm doing a lyric, it's poetry to me. So here we go. Maybe you can all join in. The problem is we can't all sing at the same time. But it's Take Me Out to the Ball Game. You know that song? Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team.
Dodgers.
Mets. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. So you figure, why am I mentioning this? Well, it's the peanuts and Cracker Jacks and stuff you get at a ball game. Can you eat too many peanuts or Cracker Jacks? Will your stomach be happy or upset after the game?
You forget hot dogs.
Based on your food choices, I'll get there. Chances are you have probably spent more time at the concession stands than in your seats. I know I have, because some of the stadiums have really good stuff of late, especially where the Mets play at Citi Field. You had a couple of hot dogs or sausages or nachos or soft serve. Soft serve is the #1 seller at stadiums, because it comes in the helmet. You got to get that commemorative helmet, and that's literally the #1 seller. I never even thought that.
And how much does it cost?
A lot. And then of course there's beer. I know that one. On your drive home, you hear your stomach rumbling and you feel a bit queasy. When you get home, the first thing you do is head to your medicine cabinet and look for that pink bottle to soothe your stomach. 9 out of 10, you just have an upset stomach, but there's also a possibility that 1 in that 10 could be GERD. According to the Mayo Clinic, gastroesophageal reflux disease.
There you go.
Is a type of acid reflux that can irritate the lining of your esophagus. Many people experience acid reflux from time to time. Most people can manage it, and they use maybe over-the-counter medications if they have GERD, because when it gets to a higher discomfort, and Courtney, you'll talk about this, you need stronger stuff. So to ease symptoms. So Courtney, let's talk GERD here. Can you give us some tips and a definition and what foods aggravate it and what type of diet can help it?
Absolutely. So you touched, hello, Malcolm. Hello, Max. You touched on it a little bit. I think oftentimes people kind of blend heartburn, GERD, and reflux all into the same bucket. So let's just tease those 3 out so there's a little bit clearer understanding. As you alluded, reflux, acid reflux is sort of the beginning stages. When it worsens, it can turn into, so think of it in more advanced stations. If it's happening more than several times, these episodes are happening more than several times per week, it is diagnosed, and it's diagnosed by your healthcare provider, by your physician, as gastroesophageal reflux disease. Both of those, both reflux and GERD, can have a symptom that feels like heartburn. So that's where the heartburn comes in. So you can have heartburn in and of itself simply because you ate too much stuff at the ballpark and maybe one too many dogs or something. But many times a symptom of GERD and a symptom of reflux is that heartburn. And it basically feels like just what it sounds like, a burning sensation, around your gastric, your stomach. Gastric means stomach, if you think about it that way, and your heart area. So more specifically, both with reflux and then with GERD, we'll just shorten it to that. You've got this juncture point between your esophagus and your stomach that should be a one-way valve, right? So food comes in through your mouth, it goes down through your esophagus, goes through that tube, and gets its way to your stomach. Sometimes what happens is that lower esophageal sphincter, that's what that tube valve area is called, weakens or gets lax, and that valve unfortunately ends up swinging both ways. And what happens is you get contents of your stomach pushing back up into your esophagus. And sometimes people, and once again, I apologize if you're eating lunch, it can come all the way back up and you may actually have some in your mouth. So it's a very uncomfortable feeling. I don't know if either of you have experienced it or anybody who's listening.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't feel great.
I have.
Yeah. So,
So have I.
So there's lots of things that, and lots of people run towards antacids. Let's just get that right out into the open right now. And will that help? Perhaps. It may, just like the name sounds, antacid, right? Against acid. It may reduce some of the acid, but you're in your stomach, but you're really not dealing with the issues or those triggers that may be causing you to have the reflux to begin with. So it's important to pull all of those together, things that you can do to minimize, encourage certain activities and foods that you can eat and beverages you can drink in order to help it, in conjunction, if your healthcare provider thinks that medication is important for you, medication as the third part of that mix.
Right.
So
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You said, it's in the area of, the esophagus and the heart. And sometimes you could be having a heart issue. And because the very symptoms are similar in some ways. How do you differentiate? Or if you really feel like it's something, head to the ER?
Yeah, well, you bring up an excellent point, because oftentimes the symptoms are very similar. So you really don't know. The only thing, and I don't want people running to the emergency room every time they have a bout of heartburn, but you need to take it into context, and you certainly need to not disregard it if it's happening more than once. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to heart attack, like pain or symptoms you might be feeling with a heart attack, those too can come and go. It's not, when you've watched, all of these medical shows or movies on television, it's not always this dramatic heart attack scene where somebody clenches their chest and drops to the floor. Sometimes those symptoms come and go, which makes it a little bit difficult to sort of tease out, is this heartburn? Is it, am I having a heart attack? The most important thing is, if it's happening more than once, you're concerned about it, get yourself to the emergency room. There are cardiac tests that they can do to tell if you're having a heart attack or not. What we know is that if it is true heartburn or reflux, if you take any kind of antacid, and I'm just going to throw Tums in there, your symptom will go away. So that is an indicator that, okay, this is truly heartburn, the cause of which could be either GERD or reflux. So yeah, it's important. And remember, the symptoms of heart attack can be very different. I know we've done a show on this before. They're different for men and for women. It's not always in the chest. It's a heart attack. It can be neck pain. It can be back pain. So it's really, really important to know your body, know how you feel, and associate it perhaps with, is it right after you have a certain meal or a certain food? So why don't we talk about those common triggers that, again, everybody's different. So I may be rattling off foods and beverages that don't trigger for you, but these are the most common foods that we know of. First of all, overeating. we mentioned that valve should be, when it's working right, that tube, a one-way tube. When your belly, when your stomach is overfed and you've eaten too much, you create this pressure inside your stomach, and that pressure in and of itself can push food up, back up into your esophagus. So, and I know this is easier said than done, but try not to overeat. So, in moderation, try not to overeat. Lying down within 2 hours of having a meal is a big trigger for a lot of individuals. As smart as our bodies are, they're not fantastic at trying to go to sleep and trying to be restful and trying to digest food at the same time. So if you eat a meal, even if it's just a mid-sized meal, and lie down, you have a greater likelihood of relaxing that sphincter, allowing food back up into the esophagus. So the general rule of thumb, about 2 hours from your meal to the point where you lie down, even for a nap. So that's a 2-hour general guideline for most folks. High-fat foods, fried foods. Why? Because they slow up gastric emptying. Anything that's going to stick around in your gut, and if you couple high-fat foods with a big meal, you're going to delay that gastric emptying, and it's in all likelihood, if you are susceptible to reflux, going to cause a problem. Chili peppers, chili powders. Yeah, Malcolm.
Well, the thing is, excuse me, when you eat, somehow I get tired. I mean, after I have a big meal, you sort of get very lethargic and almost want to nap. And I know in Europe, the European thing is you have the big lunch and then you go to siesta. So that's indicative of what you said?
Right. Well, I think a lot of cultures have moved away from. I think the actual let me lie down and go to sleep. I think in many cultures they still may have their biggest meal in the middle of the day, which for many people is healthier. They're not eating that big meal and then going and literally lying down. So and actually, although I don't have this data to refer to right now, I do wonder if we've got data that suggests that historically those cultures have greater risk of reflux or GERDs. I don't know the answer, but that would be an interesting thing to find out. But generally, we know that citrus foods, for some people, it's a trigger, for some people not. So think about, oranges, limes, pineapple, even lemon, but we're going to talk about that in a second. Tomato-based products end up being a trigger for some, again, not for all. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this for all the chocolate lovers out there, but chocolate. So unfortunately, there's a compound in chocolate that's called methylxanthine. That is it's a compound that can actually relax that sphincter. So for some folks, chocolate is a big trigger for them. Couple that with the fact that chocolate contains caffeine, and we'll talk about caffeine in a second. It ends up being sort of a 1-2 punch when it comes to being a trigger. Peppermint. So whether it's in tea form or gum form is a significant trigger. And many, I know in my client base personally, but the data seems to suggest it's a very potent trigger and aggravator of GERD. So I want you to really pay attention to peppermint sources. Now it's confusing because I remember I had a client, it's like, wait a minute, peppermint tea, isn't that up there with chamomile tea? Isn't it supposed to help you digest?
I was going to say that,
So,
yeah.
Put it into two buckets here. If you are, you just had something, you just, ate a little bit more than usual, but you don't have reflux or GERDs, in particular GERD, peppermint tea is absolutely fine. If you have been diagnosed, however, with GERD, you want to avoid it. So I hope that clears that up because I get it. It can be a little bit confusing. Carbonated beverages, and you guys know I'm a big fan of seltzer, but for some folks, that presence of the extra, air and gas ends up being a trigger for them, and alcohol in any form. Again, if you're having a beer, which is alcohol and carbonation, it might trip you a little bit more than, let's say, something that's not carbonated. But that category of beverages in general is something that you may want. You don't have to clip it all the way out, but maybe start to pull back and see how you feel. As with any triggers for any disease or issue that you're having, pull back, monitor how you're feeling, see if there's any difference, and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I always thought sipping wine, between meal, well, first of all, slows down your eating, but supposedly that helps digestion. Is that any truth? A glass of red wine, not
Well,
chugged down, but sipped.
well, I will say that no, well, alcohol will any kind of beverage is going to slow down your eating, right? Which is a good thing. The problem is the alcohol in and of itself is going to be an irritant. So again, depending on certain folks, they may feel terrible after they have a drink, and they may not. Some beverages that have an anise or fennel base to them may be helpful. So I used to joke around because Sambuca is, and I know there's a fennel-based drink. I think it's ouzo in Greece. I feel like every culture's got their fennel or anise-based alcoholic or aperitif. So the fennel in there, and I'm not suggesting you go out and buy, bunches of bottles of Sambuca and throw it back all the time, but the
why
fennel
not?
is actually a well-documented compound that actually helps GERD. So if you've ever noticed, and I've got them right here, fennel seed. If you go to an Indian restaurant, I don't know why most restaurants don't, but in particular in Indian restaurants, they'll have bowls of fennel seeds. Sometimes they're roasted, sometimes not, because of its ability to help with digestion. And in particular with GERD, it's very soothing and it's very calming. Real not that fennel seeds aren't real, but fennel as the vegetable. Do you guys eat that? I mean, I know I grew up with it. Like we always had it as part of our fruit platter after dinner.
It's too much like liquor. I mean, I'm not a fan of like the black licorice. I haven't eaten in a while, but so fennel I never had developed.
Never did it for you?
But that it has these properties is excellent. I mean, people who have GERD would like an alternative to the meds that they get.
Well, the fennel has a licorice taste. Is that
exactly
present anisette?
Exactly. Yes. So it's that fennel, and I actually have here, because in addition to fennel seed and obviously fennel, the vegetable, being particularly helpful. So if you do like the flavor of fennel, and I get it if you don't, some people really don't like it, having it at the end of a meal, whether it be, you can, like I said, I grew up with it as part of the fruit platter. So at the end of a meal, you would have some fennel, but you could have it roasted, you could have it raw. It doesn't matter. It might be helpful, but you mentioned it, licorice. So black licorice. And again, if you don't like that flavor, this is obviously something that's not going to work for you, but that black licorice is something that may be beneficial for you to have. Now, you don't have to have it in rope form like this. You can do a lozenge, but there are options for you if you don't mind that flavor. And again, it's been fairly well studied and beneficial for, in particular, GERD.
You just reminded me when I used to go to the movies to get candy, and I always went to candy that lasts a long time because it was expensive. There was something called Good and Plenty.
Oh yeah,
that
had sugar around it, so you never tasted
little pieces of black licorice,
right? With pink and white. Yep,
sugar.
Yeah, a lot of sugar.
That smell, like it stays with you. That smell, it really, really does.
But you can, instead of chewing it, what you do is you suck off the sugar.
Right.
And then you chew the licorice.
It's a very Brooklyn thing, I think. I don't know. It's the
but
Brooklyn in us.
It could last almost a whole feature.
That's true. So what other foods are good for you to have, to avoid the GERD in general?
If you guys could smell my kitchen right now, fresh ginger. My gosh, how many times do we talk about ginger all the time? It's wonderful. It's great for digestion. It's helpful for GERD. So cook with it as often as you can. I feel like it's one of those flavors that people either love or don't. But if you do, use as much. It's wonderful as an anti-inflammatory. Interestingly enough, foods that are high in fluids. So think about celery, cucumbers, watermelon. Think about, even of your high fluids in general, like herb teas, but not peppermint. Why would fluids make a difference? Well, two things. Remember, we've spoken about this before. The more fluid you got in that gut, expanding the pressure a little bit keeps you fuller. It'll fill you faster and you're less likely to overeat. So that's number one. And we know that, that the fluid in your gut, in your stomach, may actually dilute some of the stomach acid. So even something like lemon, which I've had people say to me, it's like, wait a minute, lemon is acidic. Why would I want that? I'm not talking about eating a whole lemon. I'm talking about simply putting lemon inside water. It actually creates a very alkalized solution and a beverage for you to drink. So keep that in mind if A, you're not a flat water drinker, or you feel like you have to stay away from lemon. We know that once it's dilute in water, it has a very nice alkalizing effect. And what I mean by that is it may reduce some of the acid in your stomach. So that may be helpful. Bananas, cauliflower. These are just happen to be foods that are, remember, foods are going to fall somewhere along the pH spectrum, right? Some are more acidic, some are more alkaline. So bananas, cauliflower, nuts, melon are going to be a little bit more alkaline. So they may be beneficial in terms of reducing some of that stomach acid.
That's
Yeah,
great.
there's one other thing. You say, aside from indicative, possibly a heart attack, what other bodily functions or diseases might lead to reflux or to GERD that you should check for?
Well, you could have something if unchecked and untreated. Have you guys heard of Barrett's esophagus?
No.
Barrett's esophagus, if untreated, could lead to esophageal cancer down the road. So, when some people are like, oh, it's GERD, it's just reflux, I'll pop some Tums and I'll be done. Make sure you get evaluated. Make sure you see a healthcare provider, because not always, but it could lead to this Barrett's esophagus, and untreated Barrett's esophagus could lead to, like I said, some type of esophageal cancer. There could be a blockage. That's why you say you can't just diagnose this on your own. You need a doctor to be able to truly diagnose, particularly if this is happening frequently. So you don't just wing it, and certainly don't just keep throwing back Tums, because what we know about, antacid use long term is that of course it's going to reduce the acid in your stomach, but by doing so, it is also going to put you at risk for foodborne illness. Remember, one of your body's amazing mechanisms of keeping you from getting sick is that it's got to make its way through that very acidic environment of your stomach. And if you take away that acidic environment long term, you've lost one of your layers of protection for getting that, a nasty, foodborne illness.
Does drinking
What about
water
exercise?
dilute the acid?
Say that one more time, Malcolm.
Does drinking water help dilute the acid in your stomach?
Yeah. So you don't want to do it so much that you feel pressure. Like don't say, well, more is better and I'm going to throw back 3 gallons, but staying well hydrated and fluids in general may help. So fluids drinking or fluids in your food may help dilute some of that acid. And Max, I heard you ask about
exercise. What do we need? What can we know about exercise that might help this, if anything?
So before I leave, and we'll talk about exercise. One of the easy housekeeping things that you could do to help with GERD doesn't involve food. It involves your bed. Prop your head up. Either use a wedge or pillows underneath. So underneath the mattress, so you're literally sitting on an angle. And I know it sounds crazy, but for many people, that in conjunction with some dietary modifications and maybe medication, if the healthcare provides it, say it really works wonders. So I do want to mention that because it's important. But most people don't know that excessive exercise, and you guys know exercise is key for me, and I'm always talking about it. But any exercise that's going to increase abdominal pressure is going to be a trigger for GERDs. So for those of you out there who you're into, high intensity interval training, so HIIT training, heavy lifting, You do an excessive amount of crunches. You're training for a marathon. So we know that those individuals who train for long running races are going to be at greater risk for these triggers that aggravate their GERD. So you really want to, it doesn't mean go down to zero. It just means monitor your symptoms, see how you feel. Let's just say you've done your HIIT exercise, your bout of exercise, and you're feeling, you feel it kick in, that GERD right after that. Maybe you can modify the routine a little bit so that you're not creating as much abdominal pressure. So most people don't know that certain exercises can be aggravating their GERD.
Well, I always thought like when you eat, the blood goes from the stomach from digestion into your muscles. So would this be part of that, cause of it? You still are digesting, and you haven't completed digesting. So the blood is going away from the stomach to help digestion, but going to the muscles.
Right. So you are right. Your blood is shunted from, which is why you really don't want to. So from working with an athlete, you want to really gauge your food intake and exercise intake carefully, because your blood is shunted from your gut to your working muscles, and that will take priority. It's going to go to the muscles. So what that does is it affects your gastric emptying, and that could certainly be problematic. If you're an athlete, and whenever I work with an athlete, generally, and everybody's a little bit different on whether they're able to work out on an empty stomach or not, but if you fall into an athlete who does one of those exercises, those types of exercises that increase abdominal pressure, like I just mentioned, you may want to either not eat before you go or that bout of exercise, or just eat very small amount. And if you are eating, make sure that it is just predominantly some carbohydrate, which can leave empties from your gut very quickly. So it might be less of a problem. So keep that in mind. And if you are going to eat, you want to there's that 2-hour window again. If you're somebody who really needs to eat before you're exercising, try and give yourself about 2 hours before that bout of exercise to allow your some digestion to occur before you go to do that activity.
Exercise and what you can do. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So if you do, again, which doctor handles, a GERD? Who would you need to see if you thought something was wrong?
Well, you could certainly start with your internist, but typically a gastroenterologist would be, that's their area of specialty. So, but if you can't get in to see a gastroenterologist, or you need a referral or something like that beforehand, certainly start with, your internist and see if he or she can at least help you. You don't want to be suffering. I mean, if you need medication, or they can maybe order a test, just to kind of get the diagnosis process underway, he or she might be able to help. That's
good. Stay away from the hot dog eating contest at Coney Island at Naples.
Perhaps. Oh gosh.
I cannot imagine these people who eat in food contests. They must have GERD. I can't. I
feel like I'm going to explode every time I hear about that.
I can't watch it. I cannot watch it. I don't know if Malcolm can watch it. Yeah. I cannot even look at them doing it.
They train their stomachs. This is where I understand. It's a way of training your stomach to eat.
How do you eat 67 hot dogs in like?
I think it's Joey Chestnut. I think is the name of the guy who eats it, and they're not fat.
I know. But as a dietitian, what is your thoughts on that, Courtney?
It's just so opposite of my philosophy of what food should be. I get it. It's entertainment. So I'm putting it in the entertainment bucket, but it's so not the way I view what food and mealtime should be.
I know.
It's gross, but people like it.
People like to watch gross things, obviously, but these people make a living out of it. And they have food contests, it's not just, it's just, I was thinking about that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think they may refer to it as a sport, which is even sillier to me, because I'm not sure how that.
It's going to be on ESPN.
No judgments here, though. Seriously.
No judgments, but it just came to mind when I was thinking about it. I was almost going to use that in my opening, but it was too gross for me to even look at it because then it was pointing me to these videos I did not want to look at. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. It's just,
Nope.
I don't mind going
This-
to the ballpark. but-
There's a small Japanese girl who I think beat Joey Chestnut one time in the hot dog thing for Coney Island, but she's small. I mean, it's amazing how she gets all that food in her.
I
I
again,
don't know. It
I know we're
can't be
gonna have
good.
to do a food special in July about it.
We are, I'm gonna have to do some research and find
Yeah,
out.
check out what what their I wonder if any of them have wound up in the ER. I don't know. It's just-
Well, maybe we should do a special on July 4th when they do the Coney Island hot dog thing.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
get one of the people or before sometime in June. Anyway, guys, as usual, our time is up.
Oh
Faster than
no.
we thought.
I mean, we have to end with the hot dog eating.
I know,
contest?
we had such good info and now we're ending on like eating 57 hot dogs.
That's all American.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we played the national anthem after. And we did the American flag.
that's right. Well, I guess none of you bet on that horse, Rich Strike or Strike
Oh my
Rich, whatever.
gosh, the underdog, wasn't that fabulous?
I
Right.
loved it. It was an incredible race, and that jockey was
Jack
amazing.
Rich, 80-1.
It was.
Crazy.
I was
think
telling
it's
my husband I want to
160.
lay down a bet, but I'm not a member of any of those, betting sites. So I was
Go to your
gonna.
local bookie.
I don't have a bookie. A friend of mine used to, but I think bookies are over. So-
No, they're still because they're still there because you don't have to pay tax on your winning.
Oh, is that it? Ah,
Well,
now
so
I know
think
them.
The Derby, that's what I should have done this week. The topic should have been like all of the polyphenols inside mint in the mint julep.
there you
Isn't that
go.
the dream?
Peppermint, right? It goes with the GERD. I didn't.
And
I,
yes, my
Anyway,
window.
Max,
I don't know.
take
All
us
right,
out.
let me take you guys out. So thanks for joining us on that note. Thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. To get in more info, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, which is Courtney on Health, on Instagram at CLG Wellness, and visit her website, CourtneyGravities.com. For more shows, go to MalcolmPresents.com and theManyShadesOfGreen.com. Courtney on Health, smart sound nutrition, strong, safe fitness, and we'll catch you again next time.
And bon appetit.
What are you,
Bye.
Jewish child? Okay.